Japanese RPGs, for all their oddities, have at least one adventure over, let's say, Western RPGs. If they mostly remain in the elves, dwarves, fantasy, post-apocalypse, good and evil frame of reference, then JRPG like to talk about current social issues. One of the ironic ones, in the sense of course, is the Persona series. Well, Tadashi Satomi, writer of Revelation Persona, Persona 2 Insane Sin, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, and Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, also worked on the Caligula FX series. Its second installment was released last fall on PC and Switch, and now it's finally made its way for the PC. Was it worth the wait? And how did the authors work on the mistake of the first part? Both the Caligula effect are very conceptual and very Japanese games. It's not easy for an outsider to understand what's going on here, and it's just as hard as to explain it, but I will try. In short, this is a game about school and about going into virtual reality. Yes, Tadashi Satomi deserved a very again Japanese and very length of theme of trying to forget oneself in virtual worlds. In the first part, released in 2016, and 2 years later there was a remake, The Caligula Effect Overdose. This world was Mobius, where people died of everyday life when they were transformed into eternally young high school students who remember nothing of their past lives, study, gratitude, re-enroll, and feel happy again, full of hope and everything associated with youth. Responsible for creating Mobius is a virtual idol named Mu, who wanted what was best, but turned out as always. In fact, she turned this world into a digital prison, where people were brainwashed by popular musicians. Obviously, there was some opposition, some people who had an empathy and realized that the world was fake. They created an underground go-home club and began to struggle to return to reality. Helping in this, surprisingly, was the digital idol Aria, Mu's girlfriend and one of the creators of Mobius, and they had to fight not only the musician but also the locals, who were so brainwashed by music that they turned into aggressive defenders of the regime. Instead of their heads, they had tape recorders, huge headphones, and other things. In the Caligula Effect 2, the same things happens, but in a virtual world called Rido, created by a sweet-voiced digital singer named Regret. Her name, which translates as regret, is naturally symbolic. She wants, well, at least it seems so at first, that the people caught up in the world do not regret anything and were happy. Regret and those behind her believe that they have learned from past mistakes, but we know from Mobius' experience that such utopia will not end well. And most importantly, the virtual idol Him, daughter of Mu, the creator of Mobius, knows this very well. She wants to correct her mother's mistakes and not let them happen again. And so in Rido she creates an underground go-home club where we together with her attract all these who want to remember their lives and return to reality. Bad dreams and ability to notice the presence of a blunt virtual idol that inhabits the body of the main character serves as a pass. It's hard not to notice the similarities with a Persona series, only if, for example, in Persona 5 all 7 deadly sins were considered, then in the Caligula Effect 2 the focus is on the commandment, "Thou shalt not make idols." From this comes the following: don't follow your idol into fictional wars. That is why there is a lot of music, musicians, virtual idols and their fans. Each location here is themed. Each has its own music, and even our savior, virtual star He, things during battles, which gives certain bonuses. In addition, the gameplay itself is very similar to what we saw in Persona 3 and subsequent personal release. There are combat story mission and dungeon clearing. There are scenes from school life and the ability to communicate with various characters, strengthening social connection with them. But more about the gameplay later, and now about the fact that Tadashi Satomi is just as much about the story and the characters, both heroes and conventional villains. Conditional because the Caligula Effect 2 raised a quite logical question in the circumstances. Is so bad to create, albeit fictional, but perfect world, and it's worth going back to reality. Here are conventional villains, those same musicians and virtual idols who seduce the masses. They are also just people with their own stories, who got into Redo to make their dreams come true. One, for example, was afraid of biological death and turned into a cyborg. Another dreamed of becoming an artist and an astronaut at the same time, and there is a virtual reality he realized his dream, becoming one of the idols and idols. And here is the dialogue of the character with the heroes who come to beat him. I thought you can talk to very boss first, and with some you can even have a team. It's very revealing. What's wrong with pursuing your dreams, becoming an artist or flying into space? Exclaims the villain. And personally, I was in solidarity with him at this point, wanting to ask the same question. A member of the Goham Club says some very correct things in response, which can be roughly summarized as follows. To be an astronaut or an artist or anyone in real life is to be persistent, to pay the price by going through a path of trial and error, learning, perhaps failing and overcoming. And here is unrealistic, you realize a dream just by the snap of your finger. There is nothing real behind you. You are the fake astronaut and an artist. That is, the game tells us that yes, it is better to go back to the real world and life is feel real thing. Even if it is harder to realize your dreams there, and even if you are not a girl there, but an old woman. The old woman in real life is one of the girls who, along with our hero or heroine and the other key characters, are members of the Goham Club. We can find this out only if while building with her those very social ties. Several times in a row we agreed to delve deep into the soul. After that, there will not to know episode, but the truth will be revealed to us, which is both shocking, almost make us cry, and explain a lot about the girl's motives. And so, with each of the companions, everyone here is interesting in his own way. Each has its own skeleton in the closet. Beautiful blonde beauty, a memorized loser, a diligent head of class, a student obsessed with the rules, more like a security guard, who they are in real life, what secrets they hide. So building social connection with them, that is, going through this very episode of personal history where we particularly choose lines and makes decision, is one of the key of the best part of the game. Another unquestionable success of the Caligula Effect 2 is the combat system, which in general moved from the first part, but perhaps become deeper and more interesting. It is still passed on the game imaginary chain mechanic, which allow us to permanently access the result of our action and adjust them. That is, in our turn we traditionally choose how and whom the character will attack, and then see what happens. It at the point the enemy jumps up or put a protective barrier, leveling up the damage. It is better not attack at all, but for example to increase the crucial damage, accuracy, or move away from the line to attack. Imaginary chain allow you to build entire chain of actions, when for example one tosses the enemy in the air and the other hits him. For this you need to choose the right skills, which are opened as you gain levels. If for example the enemy puts the same protective barrier and we can attack with different characters, then the one who can penetrate the shield should do it first, and then the others. This can be adjusted by moving the queue of techniques on the timeline. Also, as I said before, we're aided by here the entrance singings. The songs are active during the transition to a rage mode, and we can choose the tunes that give the team certain bonuses to attack, defense, and so on. At the same time, these bonuses can be upgraded with a special currency. Some write that all this is leveled by the ease of battles, then say why all this manipulation with the imaginary chain all passed by a basic attack. I don't know what the level of difficulty they played, but even on a normal level it's very difficult. Yes, there are possible fights where you can really solve everything with one button without looking, but there are also quite few important battles where you have to think tactically and use all the features of the non-trivial combat system. I am not even talking about the bosses. This is of course not Soulside and you don't have to reply it 10 times. But I didn't pass even one such battle from the first time, and if you play on hard and expert, that's exactly where all the charm of the battles unfolds. All this is supported by a working roll system, which is based on artifacts sigmas that give addition to the character indicator, and some of them are pumped and open permanent bonuses, which will work even if you remove the artifacts. But the most interesting thing is that there are stigmas that give the protagonist of Herion social and conversational skills. They are crucial for communicating with numerous NPC and completing their quests. Here we come to the thing that many criticize the first parts and criticize the sequel for: the abundance of superficially written inhabitants, with whom we also have to build relationship, fulfilling their mostly primitive orders. But first of all, in the sequel they are written better and more diverse. They are quite interesting, amusing scenes and stories. In one, for example, we help a pretty girl to solve her problems at work in the store, and in the other we even join one of the local gangs. That is no longer just about having to find someone a date, and secondly, do not forget that all this additional content. Tiresome, please go with the story, only occasionally completing secondary quests to get supplies or bonuses to the characteristics. So, to summarize, the Caligula Effect 2 is very conceptual and very Japanese RPG, and if you don't like it, if you don't know English and a lot of expression and very speechful Japanese speech irritates you, you better pass it by. There are more so because there's practically no fan service. The story is about something else entirely, and technically with all the conceptual location and spectacular battles. The Caligula Effect 2 looks outdated, but if you like all the Japanese games and especially if you like Persona series, you should check it out. Of course, it's not Persona 5, but taking into account the work done on the mistakes, the game captures, causes emotions and even make you think about important questions. However, it's better to get acquainted with the first part first.